All right, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about a really interesting and honestly funny drama because it has to do with the new video game. Now, where do we even start with this? Okay, we'll start with this. Pokemon. Not really one of my favorite go-to genres, or not genres, but like media properties out there. Like, I've definitely dabbled in Pokemon. I've seen the original show a couple times. I've seen some Pokemon card openings. I know a fair amount of Pokemon. I played Pokemon Go once. That was my one Pokemon game. But besides a couple very slight, very brief run-ins with Pokemon as a property, I've not really played it much. I've not really watched it much. I don't really know much about it. And I don't really care much about it. Through friends that I know who are super into Pokemon, though, what I have heard pretty much unanimously is that whoever it is that's behind making Pokemon games has been dragging their asses for the last 5 or so years. The low quality graphics, the glitchiness, the low performance, the just generally really crappy looking and feeling games that have been coming out. I mean, what was the most recent Pokemon game, guys? Chat, what was the most recent Pokemon game that came out? Scarlet and Violet. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Screenshot. So, to give you an idea of how insane this is, look at this shit. This is by far the prettiest Pokemon game that has ever existed. Okay, is none of this screenshots? As far as graphical fidelity, and I know you can't see frames. I know you can't see frames here. But, this is as pretty as Pokemon games have ever looked, besides maybe Pokemon Go. This looks worse than Breath of the Wild. Meh, that's fine. I know there's going to be a lot of slop eaters in chat. That's fine. Enjoy your slop. I won't judge you, and I won't berate you like Vosh will for eating your slop media. But what's clear from a lot of people that like Pokemon that I've spoke to is they feel very disappointed and very let down that the amount of potential that Pokemon as a media franchise has been, especially in the world of gaming, in the last 5 or so years, really, really upset, very disappointing. I mean, back in the day, Pokemon games were seen as, the top tier. Everybody loved Pokemon games, especially on, those little mobile things with, the pixel ones, the ones that were, 8-bit and whatnot. People loved those. That was, the peak of Pokemon games from what I've heard. But nowadays, it seems like people have a much more negative opinion, and it also seems like the vast majority of the games are made to target a young audience, despite the majority of the paying and playing fan base being adults. And that has definitely upset a fair amount of Pokemon fans as well. I'm going to be honest. The last time I saw, a kid walking around wearing Pokemon merch, I don't even remember. I can't even think of an example. But, every other day, I see, a 28-year-old woman with, a Pikachu tattoo. Or wear, just some sort of merch that is Pokemon-related, like a Pokeball keychain, right? That's just a thing you see everywhere. Adults are very into Pokemon now more than ever. And so I know that, a lot of adult fans of Pokemon don't really like the direction the games have gone in recently. And so, because of this, there's been a very wide vacuum, a very large vacuum available for a new development team to make a new property that effectively captures the essence of Pokemon, but executes it in a far more interesting, fun, and addicting way. a way that's also a little bit more grown up than most Pokemon games are willing to get. And that game is one that has been produced by a indie team that, according to their reports about the development of the game, this was a shot in the dark by a team that basically started the project not knowing the first thing about how to make a game like this and lucked out in making something that people actually really enjoy playing. That game is Palworld. It came out on Steam about a week ago now, and since then it has blown up. It is the most played game on Steam, I believe, if not the second most played game on Steam, and people are loving it. Now, I personally have not played Palworld, nor do I really intend to play Palworld. I will most likely never touch this game at all in my entire life. However, what I have seen is that everybody who is playing it is loving it. I have watched a couple streamers play it, not really paying attention to the gameplay so much as paying attention to the streamers' opinions and experience and reactions to the gameplay experience, and they've pretty much unanimously been having fun. My friends who've gotten into it have all been having fun and really want me to join them in it, but I don't really plan to because it's just not my cup of tea. It's a bit like Ark with Pokemon-looking, Pokemon monsters, and very much more modern, well-defined graphics than the kind of stuff you're going to see in any Nintendo. Is it Nintendo that produces Pokemon stuff? I actually don't know. Is it Nintendo that makes that shit? Or is it like Pokemon Company or something like that? I think like Nintendo owns part of it. Game Freak and Nintendo. Okay, yeah. Way higher quality, especially graphically, than anything Game Freak and Nintendo put out. Like, look, this is not like a render screenshot. This is like what the game looks like. This is what the game looks like. And I know it doesn't even look as pretty right now because you're seeing a screenshot shown through a YouTube video, which is then being live streamed to you through my stream. But even through that, you can tell this is some high-quality graphics, right? Like, it's pretty, it's a pretty game. I grant it that. I will admit, it looks obnoxious. And when I first saw this game, my first instinct was to immediately jump on the growing hate train against it. Because obviously, any new big popular piece of media, once enough people start jumping on board with it, people who aren't really interested in getting on board with the hype train start to feel like they have to have an opinion on it. And the more they hear about it without really being into it, they start to get annoyed. They start to hate that thing. And so when allegations came out that this game was using stolen assets and AI art, a lot of people immediately jumped to believe this. And to substantiate these claims, people started to produce screenshots that claim to be evidence of this. Things such as wire mesh models compared side to side from Pokemon games and Palworld to try to prove that they had stolen meshes. They tried to claim that the models were generated using AI. Things like that. And there's very obviously, like, this is very clearly like, yes, this is like, I don't know is there like a plant type Eevee? Or is Eevee just Eevee, and then you have to evolve it into, like, a Vaporeon or whatever, right? I don't know. But this is very clearly supposed to be, like, reminiscent of, like, an Eevee from Pokemon, for example, right? And Leafeon, that's a thing? Well, Leafeon's an evolution of a Eevee, right? Isn't Eevee just, like, the base form of any of those, like, Eon Pokemon? Yeah. I know that from Pokemon Go. I played Pokemon Go, guys. I know the little bit. I know a bit. I know that Magikarp turns into a Gyarados. I especially know that because I lived by the water back then, and a lot of water-type Pokemon spawned. I had so many Psyducks. Just a lot of Psyducks and Magikarp. And once I got enough Magikarp, I had so many Gyaradoses. You could, like, if I remember correctly, you could like vaporize your Pokemon into some like currency you could use to upgrade your best Pokemon. But yeah, anyway, getting that out of it's pronounced Gyarados. I don't care. Um, yeah, that aside, it definitely gives off like Pokemon at home, Pokemon from Kmart vibes when it comes to the designs of the characters. Like, there is no denying that they're very reminiscent, that they are very much inspired, that they're trying to do like, you know, something that's meant to be as evocative of the aesthetic of Pokemon as legally possible. You know, it really seems like that's what they're going for. And you can make an argument that that's shameless or cringe or whatever, but I would argue that as long as the gameplay itself is good and it had actual work and effort put into making it, and it's not just a scam cash grab, it's actually a real game they put effort into making, and it very clearly is, and a lot of people agree with this. Like, a lot of fucking people, based on Steam's numbers, agree with this. It's very clear that it is a pretty decent game. Now, in regards to the claims that they steal assets or use AI art, it later came out, and this has been definitively proven. I've actually seen even Vosh fall for this claim. Vosh believes that like some of these claims as well, because, you know, people are inclined to believe negative claims about popular stuff when it's getting like a big hype bandwagon, and it's like, oh, I have to have an opinion on it. I'm inclined to think something negative, so I heard they use AI art and steal assets, so I'll repeat that. But they do not, as it turns out. It has been quite definitively proven that none of the meshes or models in the game line up with any of the meshes or models that are in any Pokemon games. So that claim was, from the start, not true. It was also found out the original screenshots shared around to back up that claim initially were Photoshop edited to make the models look more similar. And even then, because photoshopping the models too much would be very obvious visually, even then, when you look at the comparisons, they aren't that similar. They really aren't. Like, even when you look at the Photoshop versions. So that claim was bullshit from the get-go. And as for the claim that it was made using AI art, like they used AI generation to make these characters, the only evidence they had to claim this is that one of the creators of the game had previously tweeted that they like AI art and that it has some uses that can be like handy for shortening development time and reducing workload for game development companies, especially indie devs. And I think that's a fair take. I think a lot of people are just kind of losing their shit about AI conceptually and not recognizing that if used correctly, and especially if we adapt our laws to be, you know, in line with modern day technology like AI generation, then it can actually be quite valuable. However, I really don't think these are AI generated to begin with, because like they're all so reminiscent of the original Pokemon. They would have had to put in work to make Pokemon, like PAL designs, I guess they're called PALs, that are so evocative of Pokemon but not Pokemon, right? Like AI generation wouldn't really be useful for designing these. Like someone looking at a Pokemon and then making their own like remixed version of it is probably how these designs went. The only evidence as well that any AI art has ever been used by the team is that at one point they made a game called AI Art Thief, where like the joke of the game was that like AI art is theft. That was the joke of the game, and it used like AI art in there, and it was a free game, I believe, too. So like there's no actual evidence this game used AI art generation. There's no evidence that assets were stolen or flipped. At the end of the day, it's a game that is blown up, is very clearly shamelessly inspired and meant to evoke the aesthetics of Pokemon, and is also, I would argue, quite cringe, because it's like the Pokemon with guns and weed and all that. Like there's one that's like a monkey with a weed symbol on its head. It's a pretty cringe game, to be clear, but people like it. And I have learned that people have a massive tendency online to yuck stuff that's popular. Like if someone likes something and they don't like that thing, they have to shit talk it because they know like, oh, if I shit talk the thing this person likes, it might hurt their feelings. And you know, I don't know anything about them other than they like this piece of media. So I feel like shit-talking people for liking a piece of media, or just really going against people for liking a piece of media, has become more popular now than ever. I'm just not going to jump on that bandwagon. It just feels pointless. Has-Been Hotel. Yeah, I've seen that tendency online, too, with, like, Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Like, a lot of people are absolutely losing their shit at anyone who likes that show. I watched I watched up until, I think, the most current episode, and I'd say it's pretty nice. I'd say it's a good show. Don't, like, cancel me for it, I guess, but I'd say it's pretty wholesome fun. It is not wholesome fun. But anyway. But yeah, it is a bit like that, right? Where people just don't like things that are popular if they don't enjoy it. And other people are. They want to ruin other people's fun so they can find a way to make fun out of this popular thing for themselves. So, Boblax made a video called Twitter versus Palworld, and I imagine this is going to be a pretty good collection of the discourse that's been happening on Twitter over the game. You may be wondering, why am I talking about this? Well, because I think that misinformation becoming prevalent online and people choosing to believe it because it's convenient ties very, very closely into the state of online and real-life politics right now. So, while this may just be a relatively apolitical video game, I'd say that people's reaction to it, particularly the negative reaction, is actually very reflective of the types of thought processes we see in the political space, in, like, culture war discussions and dramas and stuff like that. Anyway, let's check out the video.
Palworld, the game that has been absolutely dominating online gaming discourse due to it selling millions of copies within only a few days, having those millions of people who bought it playing it consistently on Steam, and of course the discourse around the game's creatures called pals looking extremely similar to Pokemon to the point of being borderline plagiarism in some people's eyes. But to get the full history of where this game came from and a bit of the development behind it, Rock Solid posted this thread that explains it all. It starts out by him.
Yeah, that's the tweet and reference, Balthazar, but there is no evidence they used AI art to generate stuff for the game. Like, there's no evidence of that. Just, like, one of the CEOs talked positively about AI art, and it was cringe. That's not evidence. That's them having a cringe take about AI art.
Him saying, thought I would make a thread to tell people more about the Pocket Pair Studio, aka the studio behind the newest hit game Palworld, and give more insight on their previous works and what you can expect in the future, as there seems to be a ton of misinformation. Poc's first game released all the way back in 2019, titled Overdungeon. As far as I can tell, it's basically Slay the Spire roguelike RTS deck builder. The game was met with very positive reviews, and good sales, and it's commonly described as fun, exciting, and dynamic. It has over time gotten a few DLCs, but nothing really of note. 1 year later, Pocket released their flagship title of Craftopia. Game was met with mostly positive reviews, but criticized for lack of content, bugs, and non-working multiplayer mode. The game is very clearly heavily inspired by games such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Genshin Impact, and to some degree Factorio. As for today, the game has mixed reviews on Steam, mainly because it seems that Double completely abandoned the project to focus on Palworld. They outlined this in a blog post explaining that due to an engine change and financial problems, they had to make a choice between keeping Craftopia afloat or going all in on Palworld. They chose the latter, though with the newfound success from Palworld, there may be hope. Probably the most talked about and controversial game from their catalog, nearly 2 years after Craftopia, Double.
Ironically, you know what development process this mirrors directly? Fortnite. The explosion of Palworld reminds me so much of Fortnite's initial explosion in popularity, where it came out and it blew up overnight. Within, like, 5 days of the Battle Royale becoming available to people, it went from being, like, a failing, barely, like, chugging along game with, like, the Save the World and whatnot, to exploding in player count overnight. Just exploding. And as it got more popular, and as everybody started to play it, you started to see the same phenomenon happen. You saw people claiming it was a ripoff of PUBG, people claiming PUBG or PlayerUnknown's, I think is the name of the company, whatever, Battlestate Games, I think, is maybe the company that makes them, should sue Epic Games. Obviously Epic Games wasn't on the edge of, like, falling off, but the team that made Fortnite, and, like, Fortnite as a, game, was not all that successful. And then it blew up out of nowhere. It was a shot in the dark. It probably by now would have lost. If it was just Save the World would have definitely gone offline, and like there would be no more Fortnite if it was just Save the World. It would have gone offline. There'd be no support for it probably a while ago. But not Save the World. Battle Royale came out. It blew up, and either people loved it or they hated it. Because after a couple months, everybody knew what Fortnite was. And it reminds me a lot of what's happening with Palworld right now. I feel like now, though, like, what is it, 7 years later, 6 years later, Fortnite's been around for so long, it's been maintaining very big numbers for so long, it's sort of cemented itself as, like, a respectable game, you know? Like, people still make fun of Fortnite, but no one can really claim it's, like, a dead game, or it's, like, a nothing game, or it's, like, fallen off or anything. You know, it's a cultural icon. It's been around for years and years and years. It's maintained its popularity. I think it reached its newest peak of total players recently. Again, which is fucking crazy, especially like 7 years after Battle Royale's release. So yeah, it really reminds me of the phenomenon with Fortnite.
Released a small-scale party game, AI Imposter, where everyone gets an art theme besides one person, the imposter, and has to follow that theme to the letter on vote and try to uncover who is the imposter based on the art they generate. To me, this game seems like
this was the other game they made that did use AI art.
Good idea made on a complete whim. Seems like something that spawned as an idea out of the whole rise of AI art at the time, but never really went anywhere. This brings us to Palworld in 2024. Interestingly, many people may not know this, but this project was barely even made in time. Double was very low on funds as the game cost them nearly 1 billion Japanese yen, $6.3 million. Pocket took very big risks with this project, as themselves describe it, saying they got extremely lucky with their hires and funding, which makes the move to abandon Craftopia not really any less bad, but a lot more understandable. They also state that they are fully aware that their game will be compared to pre-existing game projects, such as Pokemon and Ark Survival Evolved, and no, it does not use AI art. In conclusion, Double definitely has a history of taking inspiration from other pre-existing projects and trying to perfect them. By any means, there is nothing wrong with that way of thinking, and many popular franchises even today took inspiration from other pre-existing projects to get their foot in the door.
This is the future of game development, I think. At least as far as like games that are really gonna dominate and keep people, you know? I think that there are a lot of really good ideas out there that have been put to games. I think a really good example is DayZ, and Project Zomboid, right, are really good examples of this. The idea behind DayZ is you've got a big open world, you customize your character, you go in, you're in this big 3D environment, you can explore wherever you want, there's woods, there's buildings, you loot up, you get your clothing, you get your your backpack and stuff like that so you can store things, stock up on food, weapons, and everything you need to survive. Build up a base, try not to get killed by other players, team up with other players, get a vehicle, you know, general survivor game stuff. The problem is the game is being made by possibly one of the most inept teams and companies in all of game development. It's been in early access since 2013, and it's still so fucking broken that when you go to open a door, half the time nothing happens when you press the button. The other half of the time, the door opens and like pushes you as its doors open and like pushes you into a wall, which starts to make you jitter out and like phase into the wall until eventually it rubber bands you back to where, like, they should just make it so like when doors open and close, they are non-collidable. That would fix that problem right away, and then you just have to deal with the lack of feedback for opening doors. But that's just one example. Opening doors, shooting zombies, hitting anything in the game. Super clunky, super slow, super buggy. It is awful when it comes to DayZ. Zomboid is smooth, clean. Zomboid is being developed the way I wish DayZ was being developed. DayZ would be a million times better if it was developed like Zomboid. Yes, Zomboid has been in development for a long time, but they've put that development time into developing it in a good way. The base functions of the game are solid as fuck. Really, really solid. And every update now just has to bring new content because the base functionality of the game is set. You can hop onto Zomboid and play it, and the fundamental functions of the game, opening doors, fighting zombies, looting, cooking, all these things are going to function the same as the final build of the game in the future. It's just going to have more content added over time. That is not the case for DayZ. Regardless of how much content gets added to DayZ, they still need to go back and like overhaul the whole engine or completely migrate everything to a whole new engine other than the Infusion engine they're on now, which is a whole new engine they switched to from the Arma 2 engine they started their development on back in the day, in order to make the game function on a fundamental level. I think that's what's going to be required. What's clear here is that there are a lot of really good ideas, but they have not been executed all that well. But because they are the only games that have executed these ideas at all, people play them despite that. Think about DayZ Standalone's player counts, despite how barely playable of a game it is. They're high as fuck. Then look at the day before, the game that I covered that ended up being a scam that came out, and then literally they shut down the studio 4 days after release. That game advertised itself as basically just DayZ, but polished. That's what we wanted. A polished, smooth, responsive, well-made DayZ with the content of Zomboid. Because a lot of people, they like Zomboid's content, but they don't like the isometric aspect of it. And I feel like a lot of people's dream zombie game, like zombie survival game, is a mesh of DayZ and Project Zomboid made by a AAA quality team that is capable of making a polished, well-finished experience. And if someone made that game would explode to the top of Steam's charts just like Palworld within a matter of days after release. It would be massively high on the it was number 1 on wishlist. That was what the day before was, but it ended up being a scam. I do think the future of like the biggest games that are going to come out and dominate the cultural landscape in the next like 5 to 10 years are all going to be games like Hytale, Palworld, Fortnite, games that took ideas that already existed and executed them way better than their predecessors. And that's just what Palworld is. They took and also, not to mention, Pokemon was literally to the same level inspiring their stuff off of already existing like properties back when it first came out. The same thing has happened with Palworld, and I don't know. Well, I'm not really on the train. I'm not on the Palworld train. All I can say is, I don't really see the need to freak out over it. I don't see the need to be against this game or to think it's some like awful thing that's ruining gaming. I've seen so many people losing their mind about it, and I just don't really see why.
Sneed then responds, TLDR, I'm still playing Palworld, and then Rock Solid says, pretty much yes, enjoy it and ignore Nintendo cucks. And that's exactly what people are doing, as Palworld announced that they had sold over 5 million copies in only 3 days. Yokai Watch News responds by saying, this is fucking bullshit. Asmongold says, the success of Palworld proves that the only thing customers actually care about is a good game. AI, slavery, bestiality, copyright infringement, it's a video game. Those are pretend problems that people don't actually...
Well, oh my god. So Asmongold, we're going to be doing a whole segment about Asmongold later, but people have finally realized how stupid he is. I don't know if there's bestiality in the game. Is there? I have no idea. The people who enjoy the game are the ones on Twitter arguing the game is not doing copyright infringement, that it doesn't have... I don't recall bestiality. Maybe it's Baldur's Gate 3 reference. That game got called woke. I don't know. Slavery... I don't know what game that's a reference to. Minecraft, AI. The people who defend these games say they don't contain these things, not that these things are okay to be in the game. At least in the case of Palworld, they argue that, like, particularly the copyright infringement and the AI stuff isn't in the game. Not that if it was in the game, it would be fine. Basically, Asmongold's argument is that people don't care about anything, and if you do care about anything, you're an outlier, and you don't want to be an outlier, so stop being an outlier and stop caring about things. Asmongold is like the new mascot for disaffected, right-leaning, culture war centrism these days, and it's quite obnoxious. We'll be doing a whole segment about it later, but Asmongold literally just... he enforces not believing in anything or wanting anything for the world.
they care about. Make good game equals people buy game. Since Potato responds, all the hate it's getting really astonishes me. Some people are vehemently against more fun games existing. Luna's Ra says, my first reaction was they copied Pokemon, but after I saw you play it and others, I realized this is a completely different game, and you can't argue with the sales. People want this, and they...
It's more so like the devs played Ark Survival Evolved and were like, wow, this is a buggy mess. They saw Pokemon and were like, well, people love Pokemon. What if someone made like a functional Ark Survival Evolved, but it was like Pokemon-like creatures, and there was like guns and stuff, and it was like a survival crafting game too, with like Pokemon battle type mechanics as well. Like that isn't that terribly hard to execute. As it seems, and so they just pulled it off. And as it turns out, it's a combination of things that people have wanted for a very long time.
They want it bad. Dan Peters says, it's like Ark with a Pokemon coat of paint, but it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Miss Leach says, why do people assume there is the use of AI when there is no proof? Tectone shows a picture of the Pokemon Vaporeon and says, yeah, and you can have sex with the pals too. Wake up, Nintendo. Hear what...
Wait, you can? Is that real? I have not played Palworld. Guys, is this real? Can you fuck the pals? No? Okay. I assume this is a shitpost then.
Players want. Asmongold responds by saying, imagine owning the
Careful, you sound excited. I'm bewildered.
IP for Vaporeon for over 20 years and still not making a dating simulator. Bep Delta quote tweets Asmongold's initial tweet and says, when everybody realizes the opinions of social media lunatics are irrelevant, the world will become a better place. Rouse Hay says, Palworld fans are genuinely worse than Pokemon fans. Oh my god. Like the massive deflections they are doing to defend plagiarized AI slop is maddening. And now they've come full circle in her...
So this is a good example of like the people who are against Palworld. So not only is there zero evidence that the game uses AI, and not only zero evidence that the game stole assets, but clear evidence that people who are claiming it stole assets manipulated what like the images they were using with photo editors to make what they were showing look like evidence, like falsifying it. So these people willingly just want to hate the game. And it's not like, oh, these people are dumb for enjoying the game. It's like, I hate these people. These people are bootlickers for liking the game. And it's like, dog, like, play something else. I'm playing Zomboid, man. I've been no-lifing the fuck out of Zomboid. I don't give a shit about Palworld. I've been busy collecting crowbars and sheet metal and cutting down trees to saw them into planks for building the wall around my motel base. I've been playing Zomboid. I don't give a fuck about Palworld. If you're really this mad about it, it's very clear that you are obsessed with it. Like, look, 7.2 thousand people liked this to like agree with it. This is derangement. This is not just disliking a piece of media. This is being deranged, hating that media. Nowadays, it feels like you have to have an opinion about a piece of media that's popular, and it either has to be negative or it has to be positive. You're not allowed to just say, I don't care.
Harassing real artists. Genuinely worse than any Game Freak bootlicker I've ever seen. Captain Sucks replies, literally zero proof of AI, and the game was revealed 4 years ago before AI was even halfway competent. Lead pipe art.
That's also true, yeah. The game has been, like, publicly in development for longer than like the AI art generation stuff has been out there. So a lot of these designs that are claimed to have been made with AI predate the availability of those AI like art generators especially before they were capable of making anything that wasn't like a blur. Go back to like 2 years ago. Go back to 2 years ago and watch a video about AI art generation and look at the like unintelligible garbage that AI art could produce or like AI art generators could produce back then. The amount that they have improved in the last couple years, it is insane. We're not out of the uncanny valley yet, but it is a massive improvement. Yeah. I loved early AI-generated images. They've definitely gotten better now, though.
responds, so it was both made with AI and a stolen asset? Which one is it? Eric Covington says, to
Neither.
accidentally create a complex model mesh with so near exact proportions is practically impossible. To repeat that improbability throughout your roster doesn't
This is the exact post that got proven to have been edited to make this point, by the way.
pass the sniff test. And then he shows video comparing models from Palworld to Pokemon, and it seems that they are very similar. Eric continues by showing this quote from an article that says, "You cannot in any way accidentally get the same proportions on multiple models from another game without ripping the models, or at the very least, tracing them meticulously first." One senior character artist told VGC anonymously, adding, "I would stand in court to testify as an expert on this." They explained, "To give you an idea of how impossible this is, sometimes we have to copy one mesh to another when we make sequels to games. For example, redrawing an NPC from one game to another, and then when we..."
You know what the funniest part about all of this is to me? As a YouTuber, my knowledge about how Nintendo does copyright has given me like a pretty decent like in on knowing whether or not this is realistically any form of like copyright infringement that could ever be proven. Within like a day of the Pokemon skin mod coming out for Palworld, because people made mods to turn like the pals into Pokemon, because of course they did. Within a day of that coming out, Nintendo sued and like sent a cease and desist, and they had to take that shit down. Within a day. And that was a mod for the game Palworld. So what that tells me is that Nintendo, and they've already made a statement about Palworld, Nintendo knows Palworld exists, and if they wanted to go after them with copyright infringement, like charges, they would have done so a while ago. They're both Japanese companies, so there would be no like international bullshit to deal with here. Like, yeah. Zan isn't siding with Palworld, just debunking false claims. Are there people in chat like getting mad at me? Like for talking about this? Like, listen, I'm not defending Palworld. I'm just calling out where misinformation is being repeated. Because while this is just some dumb game that I am no doubt never going to play, I think it's clear that people's tendency to either hate, like, to immediately get some bit of misinformation and hate this, like, game, like, aggressively, loudly, it's the same thought process, the same behavior that makes people do the kind of shit that we call out in the political space all the time.
Rework these old models, they only sometimes match this closely due to rigging changes that might need to happen.
Yeah, you guys know fair use isn't a thing in Japan. If Nintendo had like any grounds to go after Palworld for copyright, they would have done it already, and they would have nuked them into ash with copyright infringement case, like takedown requests and like cease and desists and like take this down, remove this from the internet, and like, or we will see you in court, like that kind of shit, claiming revenue, all that stuff. If you so much as breathe the word Mario in YouTube videos back in like 2010, your whole channel would get taken down by Nintendo. They were so happy to abuse the systems on YouTube back in the day. They do it less now, but Nintendo is still a scary company to have come at you with copyright as a YouTuber. Yeah, they said they were going to investigate, but considering how fast their legal team works, it's very clear that the fact that there's been nothing's come out, nothing has been announced about a legal case, it just doesn't seem like anything's going to happen. Like, you guys know this has happened a million times before, right? Like, there's been tons of companies that have made, like, knockoff Pokemon products and knockoff Pokemon concepts that, like, in the past, Nintendo would try to sue them and fail. Sometimes they succeed because it was an obvious ripoff, like just too close to claim it's not the same. But like it just generally didn't go anywhere and wasn't worth it. So Nintendo only goes after the cases where it's a very clear win. They've got a very big, very good legal team. If Palworld was infringing their copyright, I do think we'd know by now, because I think Nintendo would have made it clear, and Palworld would have said something about Nintendo making that clear. 4 days ago is a long time in the legal world, Balthazar.
There are times when dozens of artists are given the same concept art to create a 3D model. For example, during art tests for jobs, I've seen 30 artists try to make the same horse using the exact schematics. None were as close to each other as these Palworld models are to the Pokemon models. None. The silhouettes and proportions here are near perfect matches. Eric continues his thread by saying, "My intention in posting about this is not to aim..."
The funny thing as well is they're trying to claim the meshes are exactly the same, but they're not. Like, which I think the black one is the mesh for the Pokemon, and the orange one is the mesh for the PAL. Or no, the black one is the mesh for the PAL, the orange one is the mesh for the Pokemon. These aren't... They're not the same. Like, they don't even... They're not even on top of each other. Like, it's very clear that they... Like, that... Like, the Palworld people looked at the first design and made something based on it. But to claim that meshes were stolen... Like, these meshes are fundamentally different. They're not the same mesh. The orange one's the Pokemon? Yeah, that's what I said. They're not the same mesh. They aren't. It's not even like, oh, they threw ears on or anything. Like, the shape of the head is different. The position of the legs and the width of the body is different. And this is the mesh. That is the model. It's not stealing for them to have the same proportions. And at that, they don't even have the same proportions. A lot of people called this out because of how clear bullshit this is. This point relied very heavily on people not understanding anything about modeling.
Eric continues his thread by saying, "My intention in posting about this is not to aim pitchforks at the Palworld team, but to offer a cautionary tale to would-be developers and artists. Please do not cut corners. You increase the risk to your project, your company, and the credibility of your teammates and peers. Do I suspect there will be legal action taken from Nintendo/the Pokemon Company? I would say it's likely, knowing how litigious they've been in the past, and knowing how strict their copyright laws are in Japan. Why haven't we heard of anything yet? They take time. For generic ideas, courts have applied a legal principle known as the merger..."
They take time? Do they really? Because that mod that turned the PALs into Pokemon got, like, cease and desisted by Nintendo within a day.
Doctrine, where copyright protection is not granted to monopolize ideas. However, specific expressions of ideas are subject to copyright protection. While Steamboat Willie's Mickey Mouse is now public domain in 2024, even up until then, you could still create a cartoon about a talking mouse with gloves on. But once you drew those iconic 3 circles for the character design, you would have crossed the line. While a generic idea or functional rules don't have copyright protections, courts have demanded that a look and feel of a game can be protected by copyright. Panui responds by saying, "Ah yes, when a wolf looks like a wolf is plagiarism." Cream Girl says, "Are you telling me they are stealing from Nintendo? Based." Andy Warski says, "Good, fuck Nintendo." Traget Design says, "Here's a take, no one cares. Play the game or don't."
To be fair, a lot of people who are gonna play the game probably wouldn't care if they were stealing from Nintendo anyway, because Nintendo is possibly the shittiest game company in all of, like, the gaming industry, as far as, like, big game companies, but they aren't stealing from Nintendo to begin with. If they were, then it would still be illegal, and you could argue the stealing would be immoral, but, I mean... They aren't, so it's not even a conversation worth having.
The end. Pupsker says,
"You forgot about Blizzard? No, Nintendo's worse.
Palworld pulling off the old yoink and twist to make all the money. No real shock there."
Blizzard at least still puts out, like, playably good games. Nintendo, well, at least insofar as their development, like, quality. Like, it's very clear that, like, Blizzard gives a shit about making their games look and feel modern. Like, even with WoW, they've done a lot to overhaul the game to make it more modern. It's like a 20-year-old game at this point. So, but in the case of Nintendo, like, holy shit. Have you seen how garbage the specs are in the Nintendo Switch compared to, like, a PS5? Or even a PS4? Like, they literally make kids' toys versions of consoles and make pretty solid games... Usually, not always, but usually. But you have to buy their console to play them. Unless you're going to use an emulator on a PC. So it just ends up being like, yeah.
Bio says, "I'm interested..."
Yeah, but I don't care about the specs, I'll take. Do you know what specs means? It means the actual physical hardware in the console that is running it. It's what makes it so that you're playing the game not at 20 FPS where it looks like a slideshow. I promise you care about the specs. You do. If you experience, like, 60 FPS a single time in your life, you'd never be able to go back.
In your perspective, is this some sort of common sense test to show that this isn't an accident? I have been counting polygons, but that feels so easy to cover for. Like, I could just press a button in Blender and the meshes would be completely different. Eric responds, I would direct technical questions like that to industry artist professionals. Cat Loveland says, I'm not a 3D artist, but I really wonder why I see so many people going, well, all monsters will eventually look the same anyway in these games. A wolf is a wolf, etc. I can think of a lot of ways to change a wolf so it doesn't look like the Pokemon one, for instance. Black Sage D quote tweets Eric and says, make no mistake, a lot of these anti-Palworld threads by these professional game developers that supposedly are working at these AAA game studios are jealous that this game has more success in units sold than the piles of garbage they slaved away for 5+ making.
I knew it. I knew the Gamergate types would be coming in. For those that don't know, right now, and this is like an Asmongold type take, there is this massive growing hatred for game developers. Not the game, like the execs, not like the publishers, the developers, the so-called blue-haired SJW game devs that are like taking over the gaming industry. So now it's gone like the idea of like crunch time and slaving away 5+ years making a game is like, yeah, we make fun of them for having to do that because they deserve it for being woke SJWs ruining gaming. That's like a really common thought process and talking point in the gaming community today. We'll see a lot of it coming from Asmongold's video that we're going to be covering today, later in the stream. But it's a very frustrating, dev hate, I guess would be the term for it. It's gotten really, really common these days. This talking point that, like, everyone shit-talking Palworld is, like, in with the AAA gaming industry, and they're mad this, like, indie project blew up because they take it personally. That's very unlikely. I think this Covington person is just dumb.
Are jealous that this game has more success in units sold than the piles of garbage they slaved away for 5+ making. Metal Dragon Kid says, don't fall for the lies that Palworld stole assets. This takedown of screenshots from those videos proves the Palworld models are different. He then shows a Palworld mesh which is orange overlapped with a black mesh of a similar Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, the models aren't the same, though. Like, that's all that matters. Like, if you... Okay, so the mesh is the... like a layout of the polygons that make up the model, right? So take away all the color, all the texture, and just imagine like the angles and shapes that come together to make the shape of the model. If that was stolen, they would have to be exactly the same. They would have to line up one for one. Even if they took the original model and edited it, you couldn't claim this was stolen because it's not the same. The models are literally just not the same.
Creature, and him pointing out the differences by saying, these two meshes don't match in any way. The PAL mesh is just smaller and thinner, allowing parts of it to fit inside the Pokemon mesh. The PAL's mouth is much smaller than the Pokemon's mouth, while the Pokemon...
You can also see, yeah, like the sizes don't even line up throughout the body. It's just that the mesh for the PAL exists inside the mesh for the Pokemon, except for the spots where it's sticking out. It's smaller in some places, and it's larger in others. Like, they're just both wolf-shaped.
head is bigger and rounder. The people claiming these models have the same proportions are just lying. With the still images, it's clear they are two entirely different assets. There is no one-to-one overlap of any body parts. If these were the same model, they would fit together perfectly. The front view makes the differences more obvious. The Pokemon—
Oh, yeah, you're right. You know what's probably a lot more likely as far as, like, angry bias going into this is probably, like, the hardcore Nintendo loyalists, right? We've got them in my own chat, right? Anytime I criticize Nintendo, there are people in the chat that are like, bad take, no, Nintendo's horrible, like, you know, consumer scamming practices are okay. I don't care if they're fucking me over. I'll eat their slop no matter what. Like, those people that are, like, massive dick riders for Nintendo and will defend them no matter what, and it's just they will buy Nintendo games and Nintendo products because it is Nintendo and that's it. Like, as much as I like Etika, for example, you know, Etika, rest in peace and all that, he wasn't a good example of this. He was a pretty big Nintendo fanboy. And like, you could tell that he would just buy anything Nintendo related, right? And I feel like there are a lot of people that are that into Nintendo, right? They are just all Nintendo. Nazan, don't dig down on my man. I love Etika, okay? I'm not shit-talking him. But I do think he is the most prominent example of someone who's like a hardcore Nintendo fan, you know? Who is like a big-time loyalist. So I think a lot of those people are probably a large part of like the anti-Palworld train, because they're just big loyalists for Nintendo and Pokemon, and they don't like that there is successful competition now.
Mesh has large ears, while the PAL Mesh doesn't.
Well, yeah, the devs that work at Nintendo are fine. Guys, when I criticize one of these gaming companies, I'm not criticizing the devs. The devs are just the developers, like the employees working on the game and doing what they're told. It's the, like, CEOs and the publisher, like, the top-tier people at the publisher that are the ones that are the problem. They're the ones that are like, we're going to put no money into, improving the engine that we're making this game on so it can run on better hardware. We're going to lock these games to only our hardware, so you have to buy one of our consoles in order to play it. You know what? We're going to make the next console a quarter weaker than last gen's PlayStation. And we're going to make the games look like it too, and they're going to eat it up because they just love their Nintendo. It really makes me sad to see.
The hair on the PAL Mesh is also much longer. Large portions of the Pokemon Mesh stick out of the PAL Mesh, because the PAL Mesh is just not the same. Metal Dragon Kid continues by saying, the person that created the misleading anti-Palworld video admits to hating Palworld for glorifying animal abuse. This has nothing to do with plagiarism, just hate a game for being too edgy.
I am doing this because I think it's disgusting how much Palworld glorifies animal abuse. God. Yeah, I saw PETA made a big post about how, Palworld should be banned too.
He then shows a pinned tweet from Biofrog that says, I am doing this because I think it's disgusting how Palworld glorifies animal abuse. Captain McQuack in response to Metal Dragon Kid by saying, I'm a big Palworld fan. Could care less if Game Freak feels the sting. But I'm also a 3D artist, and it isn't about the mesh being the same. The two meshes are too similar to ignore. I'll tell you what happened. They took the Lex Ray model and made it better. They do line up. Metal Dragon Kid responds, I'm also a 3D artist, and the meshes don't line up at all. The Palworld mesh is smaller, causing parts of it to fit inside the Pokemon mesh. There's no part that overlaps perfectly. Only their height is similar. Metal Dragon Kid then tweets out, don't believe the lies that Palworld is using AI-generated art. Liars are claiming that Palworld used AI art based on a post made by their CEO. The problem is he was talking about BuzzFeed using AI to create Fakemon, not Pocket Pair's staff. He then shows a tweet from Max Wolf on December 14th, 2021, where he says, I forced a bot to look at every Pokemon and told it to generate its own. Here are the results. This isn't a joke. That's actually how I made these. And then the CEO of Palworld quote tweeting him and saying, it seems that BuzzFeed engineer Max Wolf automatically generated it using a method called Rue Dali. And then Metal Dragon Kid shows this tweet from Zay Tree that says, here's the CEO of Pocket Pair talking about using AI to bypass copyright, generating Fakemons with it, calling AI Art Imposter a real-time image generation game, and being excited for games powered by GPT-4. Metal Dragon Kid continues his thread by saying, this is another example of a person spreading lies about Palworld. I am 3D model artist, and what they are saying here is impossible. If models were the same, they would have to have the exact same number of vertices. The body of the PAL is different, so that's not possible.
There's like two parallel talking points. The one that they're stolen models, which isn't true, and the claim that there is evidence that the game used AI art generation for the designs. But the game was announced and the designs revealed before AI art generators were really a thing, like DALL-E and whatnot. And on top of that, like, there's no evidence to, like, show that the devs have talked about using AI art generation for this project. So it just seems like people have wanted to take convenient things and say, well, you could say maybe they used AI art here if you want to believe they did. Like, that's really the most you could say that proves.
He then shows this tweet from someone who calls themselves a Nintendo lawyer, saying, Palworld is fun, the creatures are cute, but they stole assets. They should not be doing this. It's not proper dev ethics. That is all. I'm not saying the game is bad. I am saying the devs did something bad. When you overlap the 3D models, the polys are the same.
I'm not saying the game is bad. I'm saying the devs did a bad thing.
Responds by saying, I'll put this here too, showing an excerpt that says, the Pocket Pair team claims that Pokemon was not one of their main inspirations.
Dude, Nintendo fans are they're really just the biggest dick riders out there. They've got a boot so far down their throat.
restrictions. According to CEO Takoro Mozobi, the concept of Palworld is based on Ark Survival Evolved, which also had monster companions and dinosaurs. The survival mechanics and in-game tasks were inspired by Rust, while the Dragon Quest series influenced the creature designs. Early in development, it was decided to move the game from Unity, which powered all of Pocket Pair's earlier projects, to Unreal Engine. The game's budget exceeded 1 billion yen, and the company hired over 40 additional employees. Metal Dragon responds by saying, "The fact it combines Ark and Pokemon is why I love it. It takes everything I love about Ark and everything I love about Pokemon and combines it together. It is my dream game." Kletzy quote tweets Metal Dragon's initial thread and says, "For everyone trying to dogpile on Palworld claiming it's using AI, it's not, laughing my ass off. There is zero solid evidence they are. Steam legally requires developers to disclose AI use now, by the way. People are just mad it's doing so well."
That's also true as well. If they used AI and it was found out in any way, like, it would be taken off of Steam. Like the amount of shit they'd be on, like be in with the primary PC game hosting platform would be a big problem. And I doubt Xbox, which I think it's also on, I doubt Xbox doesn't also have a policy like that.
Mischief quote tweets Metal Dragon and says, "The level of lies and general slander being thrown at Palworld because Nintendo fanboys can't handle Pokemon having competent competition is absolutely ridiculous. Community Notes has been lacking on a lot of the posts spreading misinformation as well." Toasted tweets out that Palworld already has a Pokemon mod, which I can't show you unfortunately, as Twitter has removed this video in response to a report by Nintendo.
Wow, tweets showing videos of the mod people made for the skins in Palworld have already been taken down by Nintendo. But supposedly, Nintendo's got to take a long time with their legal action against Palworld, but they're definitely doing it, guys. They're definitely going to find something in their investigation and take Palworld down. No, dude, Nintendo will be up your ass in 5 seconds if you make a penny off of their intellectual property, okay? Palworld being the biggest game in the world right now, if there was anything that made them think they'd have a case, would make them pursue it, because they want that fucking money.
Did response to this by saying, "Nintendo has come for me. Please leave me in your thoughts and prayers." And then Dextero quote tweets that and says, "Nintendo appear to be caught."
Honest question, what about those of us who like Nintendo but acknowledge its flaws? Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, you're allowed to like Nintendo content and stuff like that. There's no problem with that. It's just the people that, like mindlessly defend Nintendo by saying stuff like, the specs of their hardware doesn't matter. It's like, no, it does. It really does matter if the console can run games at 60 FPS or not. That really matters, especially in 2024, when most gamers have been even console gamers have had the illusion that 60 FPS and 30 FPS are the same lifted, and they know now, oh wait, higher FPS actually looks insanely better, and once you experience it, you can't go back.
Copyright striking videos of Pokemon mods for Palworld. Lord Bug says, "They got time to copyright random modders instead of making a good game." Opera GX says, "Only Nintendo could strike even the video showing a mod for a different game." Jaylan responds, "Opera, don't make me love you less. It's clearly their content." Xander responds, "Free mods in another game is fair use."
Not me.
The Macho Man responds, "No, laughing my ass off. The mod was using Pokemon models, which is Nintendo's IP." Yivin Gix responds, "Okay. It's still a mod. No money is going to be made of it." And then Kai responds, "That's not the only thing to account for. Money is one part of how their IP is represented is another thing. In this case, their IP is represented in a violent manner, and that in itself is enough to order a takedown." Ender responds to Dextero by saying, "Y'all left out the part explaining that he paywalled the mod. Nintendo would have been more likely to ignore it if he didn't charge money for access to the mod." Dextero also tweets out, "Currently we are receiving slanderous comments against our artists, and we are seeing tweets that appear to be death threats." Palworld CEO and Takaru Mazubi respond.
This is true, yeah. Palworld's team on Twitter has been getting massive amounts of harassment and death threats from Nintendo fans and people who are really upset, like, about Palworld's popularity and want to be on, like, a hate train over it, because they aren't, like, part of the hype train. They've got to be on A train. A train, like from the boys. Yeah. It's been really bad. Like, it's been really, really bad. People on the internet either have to love something and defend it, or hate it and attack it. Very few people online these days seem like they can just say, huh, glad to see something is getting big and popular and people are enjoying it. Not really my thing. I'll go back to doing my thing and just move on. So few people these days seem to do that. Or maybe a lot of people do, and you just never, see anything. Those people are silent. Those people are invisible. You don't ever hear about those people. It's just the loud, angry people you hear about. But it feels like it's more common now than ever to, like, have to either irrationally hate something or in some cases irrationally defend something, you know? Like some of these messages here, some of these tweets that we've got over here are absolutely irrationally defending Palworld. They're like conspiracies about AAA game devs being scared of Palworld's success because they're jealous the game they quote-unquote slaved away on for 5 years didn't do as well as Palworld. Like, there's definitely people that are being deranged in defense of Palworld as well. And it really just seems like these days you either got to be deranged against or for something.
Responded to the allegations that Palworld copied 3D models of Pokemon. TM responds by saying, death threats over a game? What a bunch of babies. X-Avenged X-Wolf X says, some of y'all get way too serious over a game. Zach says, Pokemon extremists, showing a gif of a guy having a tantrum. Ocho says, they did what Nintendo wouldn't, and look how freaking awesome it is! Lilith Lovett responds to Dextero by saying, imagine sending death threats against artists in order to defend the honor of Game Freak / Nintendo. Leave the multi-billion-dollar company alone. Boogie2988 says, Pokemon fans trying issuing death threats to devs to protect an imaginary electric rat was not on my 2024 bingo cards. Dextero also tweets out, Palworld has overtaken Counter-Strike's all-time peak player count record on Steam. PUBG is still first with 3.5 million concurrent players.
Okay, it's number 2.
Responds by saying, call me crazy, but you don't get these kinds of numbers without getting something right that has large appeal. Otaku Raku says, love it or hate it, Palworld's success shows it's what a lot of gamers want. They then show this image of Soldier Boy from The Boys, representing Pokemon, saying, you're just a cheap fucking knockoff, to Homelander, representing Palworld, and him saying, oh no, I'm the upgrade.
No, but you want to switch those around because that fight did not go in Homelander's way. Sorry for spoilers, but he didn't necessarily lose, but he didn't win.
Oh no, I'm the upgrade. Omni says, the Palworld versus Pokemon discussion is so stupid, because if you were a true Pokemon fan, you'd want Palworld to be crazy successful, so Game Freak will finally get off their thumbs and do something legendary. Competition is healthy, it's a win-win for consumers. Phase Your Rage responds, yup, Pokemon has been shoving absolute dog shit down our throat, and we've been taking it, and there's delusional peons
Absolutely true.
that actually defend it. Sickening. Omni responds, facts. I respond to Omni by saying, Pokemon desperately needed competition. The quality of the mainline games has been unacceptable for years, but they don't improve it because it keeps selling well, since people don't have any alternative.
Pokemon is what I think the highest money-making franchise ever. More than the MCU, more than Minecraft, more than Lego, I believe. It's Pokemon makes the most money. Regardless of whatever shit they put out, people buy it because it's Pokemon. They'll keep buying the plushies. They'll keep buying the cards. They'll keep buying the games. They'll keep buying the movies and straight to streaming or DVD shows or whatever. Yeah, it's just, if it's Pokemon, millions will buy it, no matter how garbage it is. And Nintendo has just been relying on that and pumping out shit for years and still making millions off of it.
For a modern Pokemon experience. Fleas says, competition is one thing, blatantly stealing is another. With that being said, I'll still play. Fipsy says, I agree 100%. Plus, to be honest, Palworld isn't really Pokemon. Anyone that's played it probably thinks it's closer to Ark or Rust than it is Pokemon. But you capture creatures, so Pokemon. I love Pokemon as a franchise, but the game side of the company needs to do a better job. We shouldn't have a game in pre-release that runs better than Pokemon that has been out for over a year at this point, and in its 9th generation. They've had 6 years to get used to the Switch's graphical style, and still cannot make a game that doesn't run bad. I hope this.
Well, that to be fair, there's only so much you can do with the Switch. Like, what are the Switch's specs? Nintendo Switch hardware specs. Obviously, it's gonna be like custom shit, but we can get an idea. Oh, Nintendo's site. Here's what Nintendo's site gives you. Yeah, they don't give you literally anything on their website. It's all like the size and what it can do, like charging time, power consumption, operating environment, like stuff meant to sell it. Nothing like, here is its actual specs. It's a custom NVIDIA Tegra processor is the CPU/GPU. So the CPU and GPU is one thing, and it's a custom NVIDIA built thing. Do we know what are equivalent PC specs for Nintendo? No shot. It's graphical and CPU seems to be most similar to either the Radeon R7 240 GPU or the GTX 750. I know a lot of like Nintendo fans are probably not going to know graphics cards that well, but to give you an idea of how fucking bad that is, my R7 240, it has equivalent like stats to the GPU CPU in the Switch. I had an R7 260X from MSI Radeon when I was on the swim team, like back when I was 13 years old. That was my PC's graphics card. And I remember booting up Minecraft with shaders, hoping it would run well, and being so disappointed to see I could only top out at 28 FPS. It was, and like as the shaders got better over the years, it would run worse and worse and worse because the shaders got higher quality and more visually nice and harder to run. So like we're really talking about low quality hardware that even the devs have to work with. Like it's not even the devs' fault here. Like the devs have to work around really, really behind the date or behind the days hardware here. I mean, holy shit. Where's that one gameplay? Oh, I love this gameplay. Hold on. This is my favorite video of all time to demonstrate how bad Nintendo is. Switch Arkham gameplay. Holy fuck. Let me see if I can find the video. Nope, that's an article, not a video. I love how Twitter has made it impossible to tell the difference now. No shot. This video was so... Maybe under media? Maybe I retweeted it? I feel like it's the kind of thing I'd retweet. Nope. Ah, where is it? It's such a good video. It was a Batman Arkham game. Okay, I cannot find the video, but here is a video of it running on the Switch. Batman Arkham City, it seems to be. Okay. Granted, this is a Twitter video, but especially look at the background whenever, like, just in this video. This is what Batman Arkham City, in a very small closed environment in a cutscene, looks like when you play it on the Switch. The jank should be less pronounced through my stream. An X video, you mean? Yeah, what the fuck happened to him? Joker got his ass fucked up. Batman didn't kill him. This is the least laggy, least awful looking clip of the game I have ever seen running on Switch, okay? I wish I could find the video where it's like driving the Batmobile through the city and it's like a blurry mess because the 480p or whatever they're using can barely render like motion at that speed. And so it's just a blurry mess and it's running at like 24 FPS. Oh, is this it? Do you have the video? Is this a good display of what I'm talking about here? Switch versus PS5. Well, this is a pre-rendered cutscene, so we'll go to the gameplay.
Say,
Oh my god!
Oh,
yeah.
If you want some more coffee, just shout. Next service, waffles with bacon on the side.
Like, it looks like an entirely different
Hey, I'm
game
sorry to interrupt you,
generation.
Better Officer Owens. But there's a guy smoking over there in the corner booth. Wait here.
Like,
I'll have a
this
word.
is... What is texture? What is lighting, dude? Where's the lighting? Where's the haze? Where's the... Look, I don't know if you can notice it, but the anti-aliasing is non-existent, so every distant object, the outlines are extremely, like, fuzzy. This is the shit people defend from Nintendo.
There's no smoking in here.
Holy fucking shit. Did you see that difference? Oh my fucking god. The Switch versus the PS5. Look at that. Look at that, dude. Actual, not even PS3 graphics. It's worse. The problem is they have to literally break these games to make them run at worse graphical settings than they can even run on PC. When you compare these games to, like, Nintendo Switch and then graphics to PC graphics, it's not all of the graphical settings, but a lot of them are literally worse than you can achieve when running the game at lowest settings on PC, when you, like, manually select the worst possible visual settings. Yeah, I can't believe people defend that kind of hardware.
This is a wake-up call to them. I want Pokemon to do well. The competition is good. Fleecy quote tweets Omni and says, I promise that sending Game Freak the message of people will literally buy shovelware as long as we market it right is not going to end how you think. Dottalotl responds to Omni by saying, my god, this discourse is not happening because defensive Pokemon fans want Pokemon to stay at the top. The issue is that Palworld is plagiarizing Pokemon designs. I don't understand why this narrative of whiny Pokemon fans is so popular when this so clearly isn't the root issue.
Yes, there's clearly no whiny Pokemon fans out there angry about this game and lying about it. Very clearly and provably so.
Guess what? I also want there to be more monster taming games. I love this genre. If Palworld just didn't do shady things, I would not have any problems with it. After some of these responses to Omni's tweet, Omni made a new tweet saying, jokes and fun discourse aside, I'll be researching into plagiarism and AI usage from Palworld for the next video. Lots of misinformation being spread. Hard to tell what's true and what's false at the moment. Griefing Golem responds, I'm glad you are, because it felt like you weren't taking people's actual issues into consideration about why they found the game problematic. A lot of people who just want to enjoy the game deflected saying it's just Pokemon defending, when it was more about actual theft. Omni responds, I just troll in Goblin mode on Twitter like always, but it feels like my tweets recently keep leaving my intended base. I can't just goof around like I used to. Mudahar says, crazy how some people on this app still can't realize they can play 2 games instead of 1, laughing my ass off. Jilled Chaos says, reading into the Palworld AI and CEO debacle, I'll probably stop playing, mix of boredom and morality, but telling creators to do better in their comments when they weren't even aware comes off as so fucking snooty. Wait until I tell you what CEOs of other companies are doing. Plus, harassing/annoying others, or even grandstanding, tends to have the opposite of the intended effect. If anything, you are spending your time and energy to spread awareness about the game's.
This guy has the best take. Like, I don't really care about the game. I probably won't play it much more because it doesn't interest me. But why are you guys freaking out and saying, like, I'm disappointed in you at any content creator that's playing the game?
Existence. While I think Palworld was going to sell a lot of copies regardless, it's Pokemon. Some of those copies are definitely from users learning about the game because of people trying to stop sales. If you keep it in the news, it's going to sell. Hogwarts Legacy. The Streisand Effect. Synth Potato shows this image and says, Palworld discourse in a nutshell. Hey, my game is similar to yours. Yeah, let's call them Souls-likes. Hey, my game is similar to yours. Yeah, let's call them auto shooters. Then a guy with Palworld. Hey, my game is similar to Megan Abla.
That's where we're ending it. Hey, listen, if we get a Boblax 3, that's all we need. That's the video will not get any better from that point. I'm sorry, that's the peak. That's the peak. A Boblax 3 is as good as any content gets, really. It's just downhill from there. Also, we've been watching a lot of this video, and it's been going on. We've done this Palworld segment for an insane amount of time. It's been an hour. Really, I don't really care much about what happens to this game. Chances are I'm never going to play it. But as I said before, the amount of misinformation being spread about the game, both to support it and to attack it, it really just reminds me of the tendencies we've seen in the politics space that have caused so many issues and so much misinfo and tribalism to form. And it makes me wonder if this is a result of times changing just generally, if it's a result of the internet, if things haven't really changed at all. It's just there's more like crazy people now than ever, or if like the crazy people are louder now than ever. It's really hard to say, but at the end of the day, if you're enjoying the game, enjoy the game. If you don't like the game and it annoys you and it makes you cringe, don't play it. Play something that you actually do enjoy. But there really doesn't seem to be any evidence of plagiarism here. Nintendo would have done something about it by the looks of things. If there was, there is no evidence so far that has been dug up that actually proves the game had any AI used to make any of its assets. So at the end of the day, if you hate the game, just admit you hate it because it's popular and it's not your cup of tea, and people enjoying something you don't like is something that upsets you.